The phone calls are pouring in. Listeners are just completely amazed by the interview. I really appreciate Dr. Steve Pieczenik spending so much time with us. I'll obviously have to get him back in the near future. And I want to go to some of your phone calls, but I was going back to 2002 when he went public. Then he was saying, I have questions about 9/11. You know, there are issues with this. We created these groups. Now, as we went to break, he was laying it all out and naming names. Dr. Pieczenik, again, who served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and or Senior Policy Planner under Secretaries Henry Kissinger, Cyrus Vance, George Shultz, and James Baker. That's three of the most famous kingmakers of the last 100 years right there. Dr. Pieczenik continues to consult to the Department of Defense, ran black ops, major operations, overthrows of governments, you name it, StevePieczenik.com. He is, of course, on record. Tom Clancy helped Tom Clancy write his 26 best-selling New York Times bestsellers with his advice. Several of the characters, like Jack Ryan, are based on him, as well as Richard Clark. And Dr. Pieczenik, uninterrupted by the break, take your time. What was the event of 9/11, and B, why was it carried out?
The event of 9/11 was carried out for one purpose. It was carried out to mobilize the American public to go to a war that they didn't need to go to, that they knew nothing about, where we had prepositioned soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq 6 to 9 months beforehand. And what it was done, it was based on Paul Wolfowitz's Richard Cheney, Dick Cheney, Bush Jr., Steve Hadley, Elliot Abrams in the White House, Salme Khalilzad, Dennis Ross, who's now our Stell envoy, who's never been held accountable. You have Condoleezza Rice. You have all the people who were in the military, particularly the Air Force generals who were involved. They can deny it any much they want, but I have a whole list of names. They know who they are. And the intel, the CIA operatives who worked under SOLIC, Special Operations Low-Intensity Conflict, were all involved in what's called a stand-down, a false flag operation in order to mobilize the American public on the false pretense that we were attacked by Al-Qaeda and Osama Bin Laden, which was an absolute unmitigated lie. It was told to me even by the general on the staff of Wolfowitz. I will go in front of a federal committee and swear on perjury who the name was of the individual so that we could break it open. I was furious. I knew it had happened. I taught stand-down and false flag operations at the National War College. I taught it with all my operatives, so I knew exactly what was done to the American public. Believe it or not, I had worked on George Bush Jr.'s campaign with Bob Zoellick, not with the Vulcans, but with Bob Zoellick in order to work against Gore, which I regret today because I had been loyal to his father. And that issue of Osama bin Laden who had already been dead really brought up the issue of the great lie and the great war that was created for us to make sure that we had some type of commitment to a war that was not necessary, where blood and guts were shed for unnecessary reasons for men and women.
Dr. Pieczenik, I've got to stop you because this is so dangerous. I believe this is the first time you've gone this far. And when the D.C. madam was on my show, and she was trying to tell me during the break names of people, and I said, I don't want to know this. You've got to go public with this, or you're going to end up, committing Arkancide. And obviously, you're a tough guy. You're not worried about that. But I mean,
no, I don't think so.
Well, do you want to go ahead?
Who I mentioned understands that we all have a mutual, let's say, a mutual deterrent relationship. It's not going to be to their benefit.
No, I understand, but I mean, you don't want to then say the name of the general.
The general who swore to me? I'm not. No, I will do that in the federal court so that we can unravel this legally, not with the stupid 9/11 commission. That was absurd. That was the most absurd thing I had heard. That's why I came on your show, Alex. One of the reasons when I went on the shows like Chris Matthews, CNN, all of that nonsense, because they wanted me to say certain things, and Matthews had no idea what we were talking about. And going to Iraq at the time, you had all these anchormen and basically pretty boys up there.
Yeah, I've met some of these people. They are like children. And I'm not even saying I'm...
They're children. They had no idea whether I was a deputy assistant secretary or what that meant. All they wanted me to do was to give sound bites, and I said I refused. Then they asked, basically. So I found you by chance, and I said, you know what? I heard your show. I thought you were extremely bright. This is not flattery, as we talked about. and I was more than grateful to be on your show. When I went on your show and I told you Osama Bin Laden was dead in 2002, I wasn't hypothesizing. I knew it because he had Marfan syndrome. I knew the CIA had investigated, had treated him in a Dubai hospital, an American hospital. They can deny anything they want. That's all they do. They run around creating problems.
By the way, after you said that, Dan Rather did a report on it and interviewed the people at the hospital who saw it.
Oh, they did. I didn't even see that with Dan Rather. But my point is you still maintained your credibility, and because 10 years later, 9 years later, you mentioned my name, I was stunned. I had no idea because I was working on another company. I'm basically an entrepreneur who volunteers my time for the military to help them out. And basically, as an American, I said, I'm sick of this. And I went back on your show to say, this is disgusting. This Osama bin Laden issue, again, keystones the issue about an incompetent, dysfunctional administration that is lying once again to the American public. We can't continue this. This is why I went on your show. I don't care whether Obama's desperate or he's incompetent or he's narcissistic. I care that he does not get reelected. I care that the Republicans don't get reelected. I care that the American people stand up once again and say we've had enough of this bullshit with all these politicians on the Republican and Democratic side, the capital cronyism, the entire incompetency, the transnational corporations. And believe me, I don't come from the left or the right. You don't serve Nixon, Reagan, and Bush and come out with these comments. I'm not losing friends, and I'm not making friends. I don't really care about those things. I do care that as an American, don't mess with me. You can imagine the real word I wanted to use.
No, I understand. Did you hear my story about...
Or don't mess with any of my people in America. That's it. And the politicians think they can mess with
You're not their slave, and you hate seeing America being gutted by crony capitalists.
You got it. Not only crony capitalists, but despicable lies and manipulation.
Did you hear my story about Lionel Chetwin, the White House media head for propaganda?
Oh, that's absurd. I mean, it's absurd. You need a White House. Think about it for a moment, Alex George. You need somebody to come out and talk, to say, to interpret to a bunch of what? Sycophants and reporters in the day of the Internet? What do you have reporters there for? To translate on a piece of paper what you were taking? I mean, think of the notion of the newspaper now. It makes no sense, Alex. Well, it's an arcane concept.
My point is they all think they're a bunch of gangsters because there I am about to go on a TV show. I'm in the bathroom. Here comes Lionel Chetwin, who made the made-for-TV movie about Bush being a hero on 9/11, and he came over like a gangster and started getting in my face going, we're going to effing get you. And as soon as I bowed up to him, he almost urinated on himself and ran out of the room. I'm saying these are the type of people. I mean, if you're going to threaten somebody in a bathroom, you better be ready. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got it, but they're not. Most of the politicians are cowardly. In the terms of the dynamics, I'm now speaking as somebody who's a political psychiatrist and treated many of them. They're very insecure, very cowardly. They have the same dynamics of movie stars and actresses. They want to say to you, love me, love me. I want more and more and more affection. They cannot perform. They cannot produce. They have no capability to finish anything that they started. They've never been held accountable. It is not an accident. For the past 3 presidents, we have had people who have never had a mortgage, who have never been able to have a job. Clinton left the White House, said, oh, poor me, I have no money. A year later, he's $100 million supporting Dubai, bringing in a port, while Hillary Clinton comes in and say, oh, no, we shouldn't have a port. George Bush Jr. says, I'm going to go to Texas and start an oil company. Unfortunately, his father started when it had to hand it in, and he screwed that one up. Now you have an organizer in the ghettos of Chicago who has done nothing, absolutely nothing, has never really held a job, has never been, perhaps he's given a few lectures as a professor. God only knows he was, at Harvard, and everybody thinks that's a great position. And somehow, mysteriously, from the most crooked city in this country, Chicago, we get a president. How is that possible? With Rami Emanuel, who has a master's degree in ballet. Now, that is really impressive to me.
And we know what that really means. He has a master's degree in...
Chief of staff for a man who's never been in the presidency, and it really was shocking. And then he talks about And then under Bush Jr., we have a major crisis in the banking system. He doesn't know what to do. He brings in Paulson, who had no idea what he was doing, because I was a banker, by the way. One of my positions was as managing director of investment bank, taking it down for 6 months and left Wall Street. It was so disgusting. And I knew Paulson had no idea. And when I talked to the congressman, I said, listen, guys, you don't have a banker there. They have no idea what they're doing. Lo and behold, that whole thing unfolded, and now we have such a crippled banking.
Well, sir, you like Petraeus, and I respect that, but it was also Henry Paulson repeatedly did collapse in closed sessions 2 different days. Petraeus collapsed. What's all this collapsing business?
Basically, I don't know about Paulson collapse. Petraeus, it's public. He has cancer of the prostate. That's not classified.
Oh, really? Oh, so he's been having...
He is not a well man. He's also a man who overreaches. But Paulson, I would not say is the hero of this country.
No, I understand. I understand working too hard and then collapsing. No,
Petraeus, I think, has had an illness which was not classified. He has had cancer of the prostate. I assume he's better, but he's worked very hard. But the issue with Paulson is that man was incompetent. He's an investment banker. He has nothing to do with cash flow, fiscal policy. Then you had Greenspan, who told you he was doing a wonderful job, and he put the accelerator to the pedal, and boy, we went right over the abyss. And then he comes back and says, oh, no, that was a minor incident. Derivatives were really very effective.
Let me throw a few more questions in for you, and we'll take a few calls. This is unbelievable, Dr. Pieczenik, StevePieczenik.com. The anthrax attacks, they said it was brewed in a bathtub. Later they admitted super U.S. weapons grade, miniaturized, hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment needed. What was the anthrax attack?
I really don't know. That one I have to bow out. I don't know, what that was bad, but,
What's your intel on Obama and why they've been suppressing so many of his records? What are you picking up on that?
You know what? At this particular point in time, I think it's best that your audience figure out what the history of Obama was in Chicago. I really don't want to get into the birthing thing. I think that's been discussed. But there are other issues, and I think it's best that this country do its own homework. You have a very intelligent audience, and I think they should find out about themselves what he did in Chicago, what's his relationship to Rahm Emanuel, why was Rahm Emanuel brought in, and why is he now mayor of Chicago? Masters in ballet, who had no other profession.
All right, we got it. So it looks like Emanuel's blackmailing Obama somehow with the fact that they like to...
I didn't say that. I just want your audience to do their due diligence as you have. I want them to follow you in what you said, and that is to be educated, self-educated, and informed.
Well, we know all about male ballet dancers. We'll just leave it at that. Statistically,
well, it's not a ballet dancer. This is a master in ballet dance. So it's beyond a ballet dancer.
Well, I mean, there are occasional black sheep who are male ballet dancers.
I don't know about that. All I know is one brother's an agent in Hollywood, and his other brother, quote, is a physician at the NIH.
Well, what about their family connections to Irgun in Israel?
His father was in the Irgun Feiluni. That is true. His father was a pediatrician and was part of a terrorist gang. He himself, I think, served in the IDF for a period of time.
Unbelievable, sir. In the last 12 minutes we have, let's take some phone calls. I'll try to tomorrow take more calls, folks, but this has been unbelievable. Anything else about the inside job that was 9/11? I mean, you're saying you've talked to high-level U.S. government officials.
The inside job is that nobody has been held accountable. Tenet should never have received an award. He should have been put on trial. Bush should have been put on trial. Cheney should be put on trial as Rumsfeld. Instead, they all received books. Condoleezza should be put on trial and investigated under perjury on charges of perjury and war crime. It's as simple as that.
By the way, ABC News did report that
people, Elliot Abrams, you've got Wolfowitz out there, and you've got a lot of potential criminals. If this country doesn't come to its resolution, instead of creating this nonsense that we have a war and we have heroes and we do have victims, we have to stop this. Otherwise, we can't go forward.
Well, it was in ABC News that top military brass a week before canceled their September 11th flight to New York. Mayor Willie Brown, San Francisco Chronicle, this was confirmed, called Condoleezza No, she called him and said, don't fly to New York. I mean, these guys are just red-handed caught, then lying about never hearing chatter about flying planes into buildings, when on record they ordered FBI agents nationwide who were on the trail of the legend they were building, the fake decoy history, and they were and they demoted or fired those agents and gave record bonuses to the FBI bosses who blocked the FBI trying to stop the attacks. I mean, and it goes on and on and on and on.
You know, it's time, again, that I say we have our own Tahrir Square. The young kids of Egypt went forth and did what they did. America needs a second revolution. That second revolution has to entail the peaceful means by which we can get rid of this type of capital cronyism, corruption, and criminal activity. It's, again, we were born of a revolution, a real revolution. We fought England twice, not once, but twice. And we need to now understand that our government has no longer served the people, for the people, by the people. And that's why I came back on your show. I was so disgusted to hear this nonsense about Osama Bin Laden being resurrected and that they had shot him unless they attacked a mortuary. I have no idea what this nonsense was. But the point is, it underlied another cancerous administration with lies, deceits, betrayal, including the Republicans and Democrats and the legislation. I'm not, a right-winger. I'm not a conspiracist. I trained at Harvard, MIT. I've been under 5 presidencies. So no matter what the press tells you, no matter what they'll say, Alex Jones had the courage enough to put me on the air, and I had the gall enough to go on the air, which is, by the way, not unusual for me because I've told some presidents to leave, go screw yourself, but because I save lives. My job isn't to take down countries only, it's to save hostages. I saved many hundreds of hostages' lives. Now, I was so disgusted, I went back on your show to thank you for allowing me to address your incredible public.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pieczenik.
For that moment that say, this is enough. And that's all I want to say.
Wow. Well, let's jam some calls in here. This is an unbelievable interview, ladies and gentlemen. And it's all of our job to get this interview on the podcast and the YouTubes and the audio of it out to everybody. Let's talk to Alex in Michigan. You're on the air, Alex. Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Jones and Dr. Pieczenik. My question for you, Doctor, is that when we deal with this, as you aptly put, this nonsense with Osama Bin Laden allegedly being captured and killed, this operation was allegedly authorized and carried out a couple of weeks ago in April. So why did Obama wait that long a time and then announce this, out of all places, Sunday night at 10:30? And my second part of the question to that is, if we go back a week ago, after Bin Laden would have supposedly been killed, we see the shuffle with Panetta and Petraeus into the Defense Department and CIA. What does all of this mean? What is the purpose of waiting?
It's a very good question. The timing, I can speculate. Basically, they did it so late so that nobody could comment on it. Reason for the timing, and now at this particular point in time, is Gates is leaving. And Panetta had to establish some credibility where he had none before. The Pakistanis were extremely angry that he had killed many civilians, which he had. Also, if you remember correctly, 2 years ago, he had made a major mess where CIA operatives were killed because there was no clearance. Secondly, you have to remember now, the CIA is not the CIA of the Cold War or the people, the brave people I worked with in the 80s and 90s. This is a very different CIA now. 80% of the CIA right now are contract employees. Listen to what I'm saying. That means they're mercenaries. We have primarily mercenaries underneath Panetta. Panetta is not an intel operative. He's basically, I've got to give him his credit, he's a budget man. And the reason they're moving him to the state of the Defense Department now is Gates is leaving, because Gates was an excellent Secretary of Defense.
But don't mercenaries open you up to total infiltration?
Oh, yeah, because you don't know who they're loyal to. Only one thing, the dollar. The American public has to understand, we have primarily mercenaries in most of what we have in contract officers. When they say we have contractees, we have mercenaries. Many of our troops are very disgusted with that, because I've got a soldier who makes $35,000, and next to him I have the same man making $250,000 with no taxes whatsoever and no restrictions in terms of...
Yeah, he has immunity. Alex, I appreciate your...
Basic, Alex, what I'm saying to you is the timing had to do with Gates leaving, Panetta having been switched into the Secretary of Defense, although I suspect he didn't really want to be SecDef. He wanted to remain as DCI, Director of the CIA, and Petraeus is heading up the CIA, which is unusual for a general because he ran the Special Forces units and CENTCOM, and he ran much of the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he knows the drones, and he knows the so-called Al-Qaeda.
We've got to jump here.
So that's why you move.
Sure, and I agree with you. 10 o'clock at night, so the papers were already lined up to not question, to then have total control of the message the next morning, to control the entire week with the announcement, and the whole thing was scripted. Let's talk to Adrian. You agree, Dr. Pieczenik?
I'm sorry?
No, I mean, you said something?
I'm sorry, did you say? No, I didn't say anything.
Okay, Adrian in Missouri, you're on the air.
Hi, Doctor. My question is, after all of this shenanigans is going on with Osama being dead and everything, and Obama trying to get reelected, after all of this is done, after that announcement in 2012 that he has won the presidency again or whatever, how do you think America is going to react? You know what I'm saying? Like, what his approval rating is going to be, and if they stoop so low again, how will he try to get America back on board? That's an excellent question, Adrian. I really think about it, and I don't know the answer, but this is what I would speculate. Our unemployment is still remaining high. We have had capital investments, but we're not doing it into major projects like railroads, which we need, bridges that have to be reconstructed, houses that have to go. We need to get that unemployment, 10 to 19 million people back on the job. He will get reelected, and he will probably do whatever he needs to do, which is an agenda that is not clear at this point. But he will continue to push through Obamacare, which will be a disaster for our health program. Unemployment will probably remain high. And he will keep the military positioned in the areas where we don't need it, and basically our capital cronyism will continue. But I warn of two things. The food prices and gas prices will continue to rise. Food prices have risen 35% because we decreased the value of the dollar. The commodity prices went up. But, Adrian, it's an excellent question. The sheep does not change his color. I mean, basically, he's going to be what he's always been. He's going to accommodate to the moment and to the interests of the people for whom he works, which is not the United States of America. The banking, primarily in Wall Street and the transnational corporations. But it's an excellent question. I can't really further detail things out other than the fact that we're headed for more and more economic crisis. If we default on our debt, we are in major, major problem.
And that's already basically happening with the monetization. They're just not doing it in one big bang. They're slowly killing it. But Geithner wanted to raise the debt ceiling. Now Treasury is announcing that they are maybe going to keep it under. Here's the headline: Treasury to take steps to stay below debt ceiling. That's what Standard & Poor's said. They said it's the increased spending. Raising the debt ceiling is why we have a negative outlook on you keeping AAA. And then he came out 2 weeks ago and said that if we didn't raise it, that would cause the default. But now they're shifting gears, saying, okay, they may have to cut. Are they starting to get some reality, Dr. Pieczenik?
No, not really. What they're doing is playing with money. Remember, every currency is denominated still in the dollar system. And as long as the dollar system is there, the Federal Reserve will control it. Bretton Woods, right after World War II in New Hampshire, a lot of smart men made sure that everything around the world was denominated in dollars. Where we're going to have the major problem and crisis is that we will have an inflationary spiral that they cannot control. And so that's why gold keeps going up out of fear. Yeah, in and of itself, gold has no value other than historical value, aesthetic value, whatever. But the bottom line is, economically, we're not in a position unless we keep manufacturing. One of the great things about the state of Texas is that you really are very independent in many ways in terms of resources, manufacturing, and oil. We have enough oil in the United States to start drilling here. Gas, oil, everywhere from Montana down to Texas, Oklahoma.
But the cronies want to keep it shut down so they can make more money on their foreign investments, another form of artificial scarcity. Dr. Pieczenik, I want to put bookends on this. historic, now almost 2-hour interview. We're going to go into super overdrive, commercial-free after this 1-minute break. Let's just do 10 minutes together because I have to go do some media interviews. And then I want to try to call you later today if you're available so we can have a private discussion about some future things to move to get the public to wake up to what's happening. Just amazing information. But please, let me twist your arm for 10 more minutes on the other side so I can promise to get to Bill, Pat, Trevor, and a few others. We'll be right back in super commercial-free overdrive only at InfoWars. Dr. Pieczenik, you're letting it all hang out today. And we've talked, privately during the breaks. It's
more to come, believe me. This is just the beginning. There's a lot that's happened. It's compounded, but as you and I said, there is a very self-destructive element in these leaders that we've elected, and that is, and Alex and I just talked about in the private session, as people who are basically liars and contrivers and deceivers and deceptors, what happens is, like any bank robber, they eventually get to the point where John Dillinger was caught. They want to get caught. And they get a certain thrill out of the notion that the more crises they create and the more deceptions they create, that really is a turn-on for them, and it allows them to exert the power and manipulation, deception that they're trained in. They're not trained for honesty. They're not trained to implement. They're not trained to be direct. They're not trained to accomplish or create assets. They're trained to deceive, manipulate, and lie. That's the nature of most politicians because basically they're mendicants. They're asking you up front, please vote for me. Why? Well, I'm a nice guy and I'll do whatever you want. Well, if I give you the money, what are you then? Well, I'm nothing more than a prostitute. Well, that's basically what happens. They're either panderers or they become prostitutes, but you don't expect them to affect your lives in a way where you're going to be submissive to them. So what I said to Alex, and Alex agreed, and he said the point to me that through history, what happens to the mendicants who are elected and the sociopaths who come to power is eventually they self-destruct. But the important thing in this self-destruction is that we do not go with them. And under George Bush, we began the self-destruction of the United States, and unfortunately we're continuing that under Obama, and that has to stop. And that's why I came back on to the Alex Jones show and said, listen, this is an honest man who's done an incredible job, Alex, and basically people who've listened, who are smart, who work hard in this country, and I've said it again, we are in a self-destructive spiral that began 20 years ago, decades ago, with liars, deceivers, and manipulators who have destroyed the integrity and viability of our country and have been reinforced by the laziness and incompetency of dysfunctional people, both in the government and in Congress. Do not think that they're any better or they will become braver or more effective. Now the power has to come back to the United States of America, to we, the people, where the individual is supreme.
Absolutely. And Doc, you're showing a lot of courage because clearly you can see it's degenerating. It's degenerating faster and faster. We've got to get real or we're not going to be able to fix these problems. But just my... Go ahead.
I'm not showing any courage. Let me be frank with you, Alex. I fought for this country, and I've been in 8 different combat situations where my life was at risk. I don't have a problem affording myself the next opportunity to be on your show, and if it takes a ninth time that they want to take me out, that's fine. But the issue is I'm not any more courageous than an American who has to go to work, has to take 2 jobs, has to support his family, has to pay food prices that are 30% higher, Medicare that's unbelievably not reflective of the times, where doctors have to be on call 24/7, or your father has to be a dental surgeon and has no backup and no guarantee that he will make a living. This is not the American way. All I'm trying to say to America, I'm not a hero. I'm just another American who happened to have the opportunity to serve 5 presidents. I left. I didn't ask for a pension.
No, I understand, but you're engaging in common sense and dealing with a problem. But
that's all I am. It doesn't matter what my degree is, but I am disgusted beyond belief to tell you this cannot continue. The deception and lies of just another president with another Congress and another White House creating this nonsensical psychological operation, treating us as if we were children, stupid. And the media, as if they were stupid and children, and creating this ridiculous circus of nationalism, patriotism, when in fact they're cowardly, they're deceptive, they're ineffectual. irrational. That's not acceptable. That's sick.
In closing, before we take two final calls, Doctor, and this has been amazing, before we go any further, just going back to the basic criminology, the psychology, doesn't take a rocket scientist for me to see the serial killers. They start getting wilder and wilder, wanting to be caught, or they send letters to the police taunting them. And really, I think that's what this is with these ridiculous lies where...
Well, it's of course. I mean, they want to be caught. But I will leave with two really comments I once said on your radio show, and I don't mean to be very arrogant about this. I said the voice of the people is the voice of God. Let us hear the voice of your people and the American people. Let us say again, it's enough. We don't want any more. It's basically opus deus, vox populus, vox deus. The voice of the people is voice of God. We fought a revolution against Britain. Now let us fight a revolution against the tyranny of what we see as suppression, deception, crony capitalism. It doesn't have to be violent. It does have to be effective. And I have no greater faith in the American people than I have in any other country. Only in this country can I serve a president and also disagree with the president. And remember that.